Welcome to the WWC Regression Discontinuity, or RDD, Standards Training Module focused on cluster assignment regression discontinuity designs. This module describes how to apply the WWC's 5 RDD standards to RDDs that use cluster assignment. After completing this module, you will be able to describe a cluster assignment RDD. You will be able to describe how to apply the WWC's 5 RDD standards when reviewing a cluster assignment RDD, and you will be able to describe how and when to use cluster or individual level data to satisfy the WWC's 5 RDD standards. Like randomized control trial designs, regression discontinuity designs may assign participants to conditions at the individual or at the cluster level. The WWC considers an RDD study to be a cluster assignment study when individuals are assigned to conditions in groups or clusters, and the outcome measure is assessed for the individuals within clusters. The WWC applies the same guidelines as other group design studies when determining whether a regression discontinuity design uses cluster versus individual level assignment, which are covered in Module 8 of the Group Design Standards training. As with cluster assignment randomized control trials, cluster assignment regression discontinuity designs can satisfy WWC standards for effects of an intervention on individuals or effects of an intervention on clusters. The WWC will initially review a cluster RDD study for evidence of an intervention's effect on individuals. If an effect on individuals cannot be credibly demonstrated, then the WWC reviews the evidence of an intervention's effect on clusters, where changes in the composition of individuals within clusters may contribute to the observed effect. When an RDD satisfies the WWC standards for effects of an intervention on individuals, it may be eligible to receive the highest rating of meets WWC standards without reservations. However, when an RDD study only satisfies those WWC standards for effects on clusters, the highest possible rating for that study will be meets WWC standards with reservations. In the slides that follow, we describe the additional criteria for applying the 5 RDD standards to cluster assignment regression discontinuity designs, describing how and when to use cluster or individual level data to satisfy each of those 5 RDD standards. Recall that the WWC's first RDD standard focuses on the integrity of the forcing variable and includes 3 criteria related to the institutional integrity, statistical integrity, and graphical integrity of the forcing variable. When applying the integrity standard to cluster assignment regression discontinuity designs, this standard is assessed in the same way regardless of whether the study is being reviewed for evidence of an intervention's effect on individuals or on clusters. Each of criteria A, B, and C for the integrity standard are assessed using individual level or cluster level data, depending on the type of intervention effect being assessed. Recall that the WWC's second RDD standard focuses on sample attrition and includes 2 criteria depending on what approach is used to calculate attrition. When applying the attrition standard to cluster assignment regression discontinuity designs, the standard can be completely or partially satisfied in a review of effects on individuals. If the attrition standard is not satisfied in the review for effects on individuals, then it may be partially but not completely satisfied in a review of the study for effects on clusters. When applying the attrition standard in a review for effects on individuals, any individuals who enter clusters after the results of assignment are known may pose a risk of bias. Therefore, the attrition standard includes an assessment of potential risk of bias from joiners. If the analytic sample includes individuals who join clusters after random assignment, and those individuals pose a risk of bias, then the attrition standard can only be partially satisfied, and the highest possible rating a study can receive is meets WWC standards with reservations. When reviewing cluster assignment regression discontinuity designs for effects on individuals, the study must meet the following three requirements, in addition to the requirements for individual level assignment RDDs, in order to completely satisfy the attrition standard. First, the study must limit the risk of bias from individuals who enter clusters after assignment, as described in Step 2 of Chapter 2 of the Standards Handbook. Second, the study must meet the same requirements for completely satisfying the standard using individual level data within non-attriting clusters, using an acceptable reference sample. Third, the study must meet the requirements for completely satisfying the standard using cluster level data. When reviewing cluster assignment regression discontinuity designs for effects on individuals, if a study does not completely satisfy the attrition standard, the study must meet the following three requirements in addition to the requirements for individual level assignment RDDs in order to partially satisfy the standard. First, the study must limit the risk of bias from individuals who entered clusters after assignment. Second, the study must meet the same requirements for completely or partially satisfying the standard using individual level data within non-attriting clusters using an acceptable reference sample. Third, the study must meet the requirements for completely or partially satisfying the standard using cluster-level data. When reviewing cluster assignment regression discontinuity designs for effects on clusters, the study cannot completely satisfy the attrition standard because the estimated impact may partially reflect changes in cluster composition. In that case, for a study to partially satisfy the attrition standard, when reviewing evidence for effects on clusters, the study must meet the following two requirements in addition to the general RDD attrition requirements. First, the study must meet the requirements for completely or partially satisfying the standard using cluster-level data. Second, the study must demonstrate that the analytic sample of individuals used to estimate the impact of the intervention is representative of the clusters. The attrition calculations for this representativeness requirement must be performed using an approach that would completely or partially satisfy the attrition standard. Recall that the WWC's third RDD standard focuses on continuity of the outcome forcing variable relationship and includes three criteria related to baseline equivalence, graphic evidence of continuity, and statistical evidence of continuity. When applying the continuity standard to cluster assignment regression discontinuity designs, the standard can be completely or partially satisfied in the review of intervention effects on individuals. If the standard is not satisfied in the review of effects on individuals, then it may be partially but not completely satisfied in the review of the study for effects on clusters. When reviewing cluster RDDs for effects on individuals, for a study to completely satisfy the continuity standard, the study must meet requirements for satisfying the continuity standard as previously described in the earlier continuity module of this training. However, if the attrition standard is not satisfied in the review of effects on individuals, then criterion A of the continuity standard must be satisfied using the analytic sample of individuals who contributed data to the impact analysis. These requirements can be met using individual level or cluster level data. When reviewing cluster RDDs for effects on individuals, for a study to partially satisfy that standard, the study must meet the previously described requirements for the continuity standard. If the attrition standard is not satisfied in the review for effects on individuals, then criterion A of the continuity standard must be satisfied using the analytic sample. When reviewing cluster RDDs for effects on clusters, the study cannot completely satisfy the continuity standard because the impact estimates may partially reflect changes in cluster composition. For a study to partially satisfy the continuity standard when reviewing evidence of effects on clusters, the study must meet the following three requirements. First, the study must at least partially satisfy the continuity standard. Criterion A of the standard must be satisfied using the analytic sample of clusters if the attrition standard is not satisfied in the review of effects on clusters. Second, the study must demonstrate that the sample of individuals used to assess criterion A of the continuity standard is representative of the clusters. And third, the study must demonstrate that the samples of individuals used to assess criteria B and C of the continuity standard, as well as the analytic sample used to estimate impacts, are representative of the clusters. Frequently, the samples used to assess these criteria will be identical to those used to assess impacts, so this representativeness requirement need only be assessed once. Recall that the WWC's fourth RDD standard focuses on functional form and bandwidth and includes 6 criteria related to modeling specifications. When applying the functional form and bandwidth standard to cluster assignment regression discontinuity designs, this standard is assessed in the same way regardless of whether the study is being reviewed for evidence of an intervention's effect on individuals or on clusters. Each of criteria A through F for this standard are assessed using either individual level or cluster level data, depending on the type of intervention effect being assessed. Finally, recall that the WWC's fifth RDD standard focuses on fuzzy regression discontinuity designs. When applying the fuzzy RDD standard to cluster assignment regression discontinuity designs, this standard is assessed in the same way regardless of whether the study is being reviewed for evidence of an intervention's effect on individuals or on clusters. Each of criteria A through H for the standard are assessed using either individual level or cluster level data, depending on the type of intervention effect being assessed. This module described how to apply the WWC's RDD standards to cluster assignment regression discontinuity design studies. We discussed the unique considerations needed when applying the 5 RDD standards, which may vary depending on whether the review is focused on the effects of the intervention on individuals or the effects of the intervention on clusters. The next module in this training series will focus on the unique considerations needed when estimating effect sizes from regression discontinuity design studies.